The only reason Ronaldo was at the Euros this year wasn't because he wanted to win, but because of something else, something deeper than you know. See guys, at 39 most athletes would probably have retired from international football way back and be grinding toward the end of their careers. But Ronaldo's still in the game, international football, and he's still actively playing. And it's all because of one thing. Scratch that, one person. Ronaldo and Portugal have a special connection that goes way back. He was born in Madeira in Lisbon on February 5th, 1985, grew up there, went from being that struggling kid in the Lisbon Academy to a special talent the world took notice of. And in 2003, after bursting onto the scene and becoming so good that Manchester United signed him in the summer, Ronaldo's journey with the Portuguese Seleção was about to begin. He made his debut against Kazakhstan in 2003, and at that time he wasn't quite the goal machine we all know today. Back then, he was a speedy winger with tricks to destroy fullbacks for days. Ronaldo's early form eventually got him a spot for the Euros in Portugal that year. The home crowd was right behind them, and the team promised a lot. The team had a balance and mixture of both young and experienced too. Youngsters like Ronaldo and Deco were playing in their first major tournaments for the team, while the experienced heads of Luis Figo and Rui Costa had been around long enough to know what it would take to win. Ronaldo got the nod to start in the opening game. He was still only 19, starting in his first major tournament. But it didn't faze because in the same game, Ronaldo set Lisbon on fire. Unfortunately, his teammates couldn't quite replicate the same energy. They lost to Greece 2-1, but that game was Ronaldo's way of laying a marker for what was to come. He got an assist in the next game against Russia, Portugal's first win of the competition, helped knock out Spain and England in the final group stage game and the quarter-finals. And in the semi-finals versus the Dutch, Ronaldo ran the show. He scored one and assisted the other to take Portugal to a 2-1 win and into the final. But what should have been his dream debut competition at the final in Porto ended wrong, and perhaps this was the sign of Ronaldo's future to come. They lost to Greece again in the final, and his dream of winning the Euros on home soil was over. Still, Ronaldo was only at the beginning. The early signs he'd shown were full of promise. He was maturing as the years passed. By the time the 2006 World Cup came along, Ronaldo and Portugal were termed as the dark horses coming into this one. The stage was set for him and Figo to cause major upsets in the competition, and to a certain extent, they did. They finished 4th. Ronaldo also bagged in the competition as well, scoring his first World Cup goal against Iran. And in the two competitions he played so far, he played crucial roles in Portugal reaching the latter stages. The 2006 version of Ronaldo was a superstar in the making, but by the time 2008 rolled around, Ronaldo was something else. He finished the domestic season by breaking the Premier League record for the most goals in the season, won the competition as well, finished as the Champions League top scorer, and scored in the final two. He was different class. And so when the Euros of that year were all set to kick off, Ronaldo must have been expecting to come in as a superstar of the team, trying to focus and do his thing. But the Portuguese FA had realised something. This competition was supposed to be the passing of the torch. In the last two editions, Portugal had leaders like Figo and Costa full of experience who had seen it all and done it all at club level. But this time they knew the national team had changed. At 23 now, Ronaldo was no longer that young kid from the 2004 Euros. He was a talent that wouldn't stop rising, and before he entered the peak years of his career, Portugal gave him a role that would end up coming back to haunt him. He was named as the country's new captain at the start of the Euros. The decision was honestly shocking. To become a national team captain at 23, the player had to be good. Ronaldo knew what this new role meant. Apart from it being increased responsibility, he'd now been officially handed the mission keys to trying to complete Mission Impossible. At the time, the best Portugal had ever managed in an international competition was reaching the Euro finals 2 years back. They had no international trophies, and it was now Ronaldo's job to make sure he captained a team that would eventually win one in the coming years. The Euros of 2008 was the start, but this one went off the road. Horribly wrong. He scored and assisted versus the Czech Republic. Portugal won 2 of their 3 group stage games to advance, but in the quarterfinals versus Germany, they lost 2-3 and got knocked out. Unlike previous times when he was just a member of the team, Ronaldo soon saw the effects of taking up the captain's armband. After the team got knocked out, a lot of criticism was coming his way for not being able to lead them properly in a big game. This wasn't gonna stop. Ronaldo knew this too. As long as he wore the armband for Portugal, it was always going to be one of two things. He'd have fans who were ready to cheer him and the team on, and people ready to criticize him every time the team had a bad game or played awful. Ronaldo didn't let the Euro disappointment get to him though. He played one more season at Manchester United before securing a world record move to Real Madrid in 2009. 1 year later, in 2010, the World Cup was all set to take place in South Africa. And at 25 now, Ronaldo had officially entered his peak years. He now had 1 Ballon d'Or in his locker, the prize for being the best football player on the planet, had a more than decent first season at Madrid, and for the national team, his numbers weren't bad either. He got 22 goals in 62 appearances for Portugal. This was an average of a goal every 2.8 games. And with the way the team had developed now, featuring new exciting talent like Nani, Ricardo Quaresma, Jose Bosingwa, João Mourinho, there was a lot of hope and optimism as to just how far Portugal could go in the competition. They made it out of the group stage in second place with 5 points. Ronaldo scored and assisted in the 7-0 win versus North Korea, his first goal in over 16 months for the national team. But in the round of 16 against Spain, David Villa was the difference, and Portugal got knocked out. With Ronaldo as national team captain, the highest Portugal had done was advance out of the group stages in major competitions. And his critics were once again out for him, this time full on. Compliment to Ronaldo though, he knew what the role meant, he couldn't escape stuff like this. The 2010 World Cup was a disappointment, so now it was all systems go to the next international competition around the corner, Euro 2012. And Ronaldo was once again at the centre for mixed reasons. He'd scored 5 goals in the qualifiers for the Euros that year, but at the start of the competition proper, in the opening game versus Germany, the 1-0 defeat sparked crazy reactions. Ronaldo failed to perform in the match, and he took the bulk of the blame. It was looking like they'd struggled for the 3rd successive competition in a row. The team rallied back to a 2-3 win versus Denmark to keep hopes of qualification to the next stage alive. But 2 games gone and with no goal contribution, Ronaldo wasn't having the best of tournaments at all. He was 27 now, about to enter the prime years of his career, and he still had nothing to show for it at international level. Ronaldo knew he needed to step up his game, and he needed to do this fast. So in the next group stage game versus the Netherlands, he came into this one like a man on a mission and balled out. He scored a brace versus the Netherlands to turn the game around for Portugal and win it 2-1. Ronaldo followed this up by scoring the only goal of the game in a 1-0 win versus the Czech Republic in the quarterfinals. But in the semis against Iberian neighbours Spain, they lost on penalties, and once again the dream of winning a trophy with the national team was gone for Ronaldo. Like he'd done all his career, he didn't quit. He used the next 2 years to become arguably even better, winning the Ballon d'Or in 2013, and perhaps his biggest performance of the year came wearing the national team jersey. To qualify for the 2014 World Cup, Portugal had to avoid defeat in the second leg of the playoffs versus Sweden, and the Swedish team was going all out to qualify. Zlatan scored a brace in the game, and against any other team this would have been enough to win the game and send them to the World Cup. But Ronaldo was on different gravy in the competition, and his response? He fired back with a hat-trick to send Portugal to the finals in Russia. Coming into the 2014 World Cup, Ronaldo's tally for Portugal was impressive. At 49 goals in 110 matches, he was 1 away from hitting an impressive 50. He'd used the qualifiers to become the all-time top scorer for the national team. Despite the feat though, the opinions were still divided about him. On one hand, he transformed from that tricky winger with dribbles to a goal-scoring machine, but on the other hand, he was yet to take Portugal to at least a final as captain, and what they thought was their golden generation had fewer competitions to play. Ronaldo entered the 2014 World Cup with a significant injury he picked up towards the end of the season that forced him to use a knee brace throughout the campaign. He wasn't a 100% fit, and unfortunately this cost him and the team. They suffered a heavy 4-0 defeat to Germany in the opening game, drew with the United States 2-2 to leave any hopes of qualification dangling by a thread. And in the final game versus Ghana, despite winning it 2-1, Ronaldo bagging his 50th goal for Portugal, They failed to qualify to the round of 16, got eliminated in the group stage, and for the first time in his career, Ronaldo began to doubt himself. It's tough being a leader, and Ronaldo was experiencing this full on. Back home, he returned to a bulk of fans demanding an explanation as to why the team performed that poorly in Brazil, and the only thing he could do was apologize. This one would have hurt him, and in trying to change that, he set the scene for what would later become the biggest competition of his life. Euro 2016. Ronaldo was now 31, the fourth Euros of his career, and with 58 goals for Portugal in the bag, this had to be his final peak chance of getting something with Portugal. Ronaldo came into the Euros on the back of a 50-plus goal season for Real Madrid. Sensational form, and now he needed to replicate that on the pitch. The opening game versus Iceland ended in a 1-1 draw. Hope for the next game perhaps, but in the match versus Austria, a 0-0 draw meant Portugal was hanging on with slim hopes of qualifying. At this point, it's important to note the new rule UEFA had put out in competition. It now became an official rule for all players to subscribe to Mr. Football before the start of the tournament. Not like they were complaining though. I mean, they checked out the channel and all got hooked. The other one was the increased format size. It was no longer just a 16-man tournament. UEFA had now increased it to a 24-man tournament, meaning there were going to be 6 groups with 2 teams qualifying from each group, and 4 or the best third-place teams would join them to make up the round of 16. In the final group stage game versus Hungary, Ronaldo got off the mark, but his brace could only take Portugal to a 3-3 draw. Thanks to the new format, they qualified as one of the best third-place teams. Portugal at this point was somehow surviving to the surprise of everyone. In the round of 16, they faced Croatia in a tipsy-turvy game. It went to extra time, and with less than 12 minutes to go, Ronaldo assisted the only goal of the match to send Portugal to the quarter-finals. This time it was against Poland, and once again they had to do it the hard way. The match went to penalties. Portugal won it 4-6 to reach the semis against Wales. It was now the reality of the situation set in. Ronaldo was on the brink of taking Portugal to a major final for the first time since 2004. First though, they had to beat Wales, and Ronaldo rose to the occasion. He scored a goal and assisted the other to give Portugal a 2-0 win and send them to the final against France. Suddenly, all the hate and abuse from those years back didn't matter. Portugal and Ronaldo were 90 minutes away from changing history, making their history. They'd done it the hard way all competition long, and they'd have to do it again, because they were up against the hosts. In the final itself, everyone knew what Portugal was going to be about. The ball would go to Ronaldo and the team would try to build around him. But all of that soon went out the window. Just 25 minutes in, and in the biggest game of his life, Ronaldo was down and out. No matter how hard he tried to run it off, that injury from the collision with Payet had affected him. He'd injured his knee and couldn't play anymore. Ronaldo got subbed off, and from that moment on, it felt like the dream was over. But you see, the universe has a way of making things work sometimes. And honestly, it felt like this was Ronaldo's turn to make it. He came back at half-time to watch the team play. The match went to extra time, and against the odds, Portugal took the lead. Eder had scored. All Portugal had to do now was defend their lead and they'd be champions of the continent. It was the biggest 12 minutes of Ronaldo's life. He waited and watched with his teammates on the sidelines. And as soon as that final whistle blew, Ronaldo had done it. Portugal was now champions of Europe, the first title in the country's history. At 31, Ronaldo became the first captain to lift a trophy with the national team. And in the dressing room after the win, he gave a speech that hinted at the reason why he's still going strong even at 39. Ronaldo talked about his son, talked about his family, and showed the importance of both to his career. The Euro 2016 win was the biggest night of his international career. But Ronaldo didn't come this far by being content with just one trophy. He wanted to win again and again. So when the 2018 World Cup came around, he was even more determined to send them to the latter stages of the competition. And he started off with a bang. A hat-trick to rescue Portugal in a 3-3 draw against Spain. Ronaldo scored the winner in the next match versus Morocco. Portugal drew the next match versus Iran but still qualified as second, where they faced Uruguay in the round of 16. But that was unfortunately where the journey ended for Ronaldo. They suffered a 2-0 defeat and got knocked out. Still, it was clear that Portugal was in their golden era. At 33 with 85 goals in 152 games for the national team, Ronaldo was now captain of a team with players like Bruno Fernandes, Ruben Dias, Bernardo Silva, Joao Cancelo. All these guys had now come into the national team and wanted to win. So when UEFA introduced a new competition in 2019, the Nations League, it became another chance for Ronaldo and the team to add more silverware to the cabinet. And they took it. Ronaldo's hat-trick in the semi-final versus Switzerland sent Portugal to the final. And in there against the Netherlands, Gonçalo Guedes' goal was enough to give Portugal the win and secure a second international trophy. The numbers were adding up. Portugal, before Ronaldo, had only been to 3 World Cups and had 0 trophies. Portugal, with Ronaldo as captain, had now qualified for every major event possible and had 2 international trophies in the cabinet. But this was where it peaked for Ronaldo. After this success in 2019, when the postponed Euros of 2021 came along, Portugal failed to impress. Ronaldo, on an individual level though, did. He scored in all 3 group stage games, 2 in the opening game versus Hungary, scored in the defeat to Germany, and scored both Portuguese goals in the 2-2 draw versus France. Portugal qualified for the round of 16 against Belgium, but they lost 1-0, meaning the title defense of their Euros was over. And Ronaldo's attention now shifted to what should have been the last international tournament of his career. Coming into the 2022 World Cup, Ronaldo knew deep down that he couldn't go on for longer. He was now 37, had balled out for the national team with 117 goals in 188 games. He was the all-time top scorer in men's international football, but he still wanted more. Wanted the one thing that was missing from his locker, and that was the World Cup. Ronaldo captained Portugal in the opening game versus Ghana and scored in the 3-2 win, captained the team to a 2-0 win versus Uruguay, which sealed qualification, and played in the 2-1 defeat to South Korea. But where the real talking point was, came in the round of 16 against Switzerland. Because for the first time since 2004, Ronaldo was starting a knockout game for Portugal on the bench. This, guys, should have been his signal. The team won the game 6-1. His direct sub, Gonçalo Ramos, scored a hat-trick and Portugal was in the final. The decision to drop Ronaldo was a major talking point. Portugal played some beautiful attacking football, and so in the quarter-finals versus Morocco, coach Fernando Santos decided to stick with the same system and bench Ronaldo again. This time though, it didn't pay off. Youssef En-Nesyri scored first to give Morocco the lead. Ronaldo came on in the 50th minute to try and change the game, and he looked lovely for the remaining period he was on. But at full time, the scoreline didn't change. Portugal were out, and that clip of Ronaldo in tears at full time broke millions of ears worldwide. At this point, I thought he was going to retire, but a few weeks later, he was turning out for Portugal under new boss Roberto Martinez. The question is, why? Looking at the international calendar, the next competition coming up was the Euros. Ronaldo had already won that, and his status as a GOAT of the game was already secured, especially in international football. So why was he still playing and captaining the national team at 38? Well, the reasons, guys, were personal. My son tells me, "Dad, hold on a few more years, I want to play with you." As crazy as this may seem, this statement right here is the reason why Ronaldo's still pushing strong even at 39 now. It's because he has dreams of playing with his son at both club and international level. Ronaldo's son, Cristiano Jr., is an emerging talent. He plays for the Al Nassr youth team and has already started scoring bangers with them. Ronaldo wants to keep this promise to his son, and that's why, even at 39, he was captain of the Portugal team at this summer's Euros. In the competition, he became the player with the most assists after assisting Bruno Fernandes with his 7th Euro career assist. But unfortunately, Portugal got knocked out in the quarter-finals in a penalty shootout defeat to France. And Ronaldo failed to score in a major international competition for the first time in his career. To be honest, Ronaldo's decision to wait for his son is looking edgy. On one side, it's a pretty crazy dream that would be emotional if he can pull it off, but on the other hand, watching him at the Euros, it feels like this is a generation of players he's not a part of. Still though, watching Junior play, I guess it's worth the wait. The kid's talented. In fact, he's so talented that Ronaldo's been hiding details of his life away from the public. Don't worry guys, I got you covered. Click the next video to find out the shocking things you didn't know about Ronaldo Jr.